I always thought our marriage was solid, like the very tiles Jenna insisted we have installed in the kitchen when we moved into our first real home. The grout lines were perfect, the pattern modern but classic, and I remember how she admired the sheen of the finished floor as though it were a piece of art. Back then, I didn't think much about the man who laid those tiles. Just another worker passing through our lives, another person we'd never see again. Or so I thought. It started innocuously, at least from where I stood. The tile had started to crack in a few places near the sink, a result of settling, Jenna said. She was right, but instead of calling the flooring company or even me to check it out, she found the number of the original tile layer, a guy named Marco. She said it was to keep things consistent since he'd know what materials he used. Fair enough, I reasoned. Marco came by when I was at work. The first time, Jenna texted me photos of him repairing the cracks, a few before and after shots. I remember thinking it was a bit excessive. She'd even caught him mid-swipe with his trowel, his muscular forearms dusted with grout. Still, I brushed it off as her excitement to get things fixed. But then the kitchen started turning into a construction zone every few weeks. She'd find a new imperfection, a slightly chipped corner here, a subtle gap there, and Marco would always be available, fitting her in on short notice. I started to grow uneasy. Each evening, the kitchen gleamed with fresh sealant, but there was a tension in the air I couldn't quite place. One night, I came home early after a cancelled meeting. I found Jenna in the kitchen, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in years. Her eyes sparkled as she wiped a smudge of grout from Marco's cheek. They didn't see me at first. I stood there, half hidden behind the entryway, my briefcase hanging from my hand like a dead weight. Marco's hands lingered on hers just a moment too long. My heart stuttered, but I told myself I was overreacting. It wasn't proof, just a bad feeling. When they finally noticed me, Jenna jumped a little. Marco looked embarrassed but recovered with a smile. "Hey, man," he greeted me, as if we were old friends. Jenna's eyes darted away, avoiding mine. That night, she was unusually quiet, barely touching her dinner. I tried to bring it up gently. "You seem different lately. Everything okay?" I asked. She looked up from her plate, her eyes guarded. "I'm fine. Just tired from keeping the house in shape," she said. Then she retreated upstairs with a glass of wine. I told myself it was stress. I wanted to believe it was stress. The next day, I checked our shared calendar on my phone. Jenna had a meeting scheduled with Marco at noon. That's when something inside me snapped. I told my boss I was working from home and parked my car a block away at lunch. I walked quietly up to the house. From outside the kitchen window, I heard them talking, no, flirting. Jenna's voice was low, sultry in a way I hadn't heard since before our wedding. Marco's chuckle sent a wave of nausea through me. Then I heard it, the rustle of clothes, the scrape of the granite countertop as something, or someone, shifted. My worst fears played out with every muffled word and breathy laugh. My legs turned to lead, but I forced myself to move away before they saw me. I stumbled back to my car, my mind a whirlpool of disbelief and rage. For days, I couldn't look at Jenna without hearing Marco's voice. I'd catch her smiling absently at her phone, then hastily tucking it away when I entered the room. She started wearing makeup around the house again, spritzing perfume before running errands. Each day, the distance between us grew wider, the silence heavier. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started gathering pieces, the receipts for fancy lunches, the calls to an unknown number on our phone bill, and even a small tube of cologne I found tucked into her purse, definitely not mine. Each clue was a dagger twisting deeper into the hollow I felt growing in my chest. Then, one evening as we watched TV in the living room, I noticed a white speck on her collarbone. Tile dust. It was like the universe was mocking me, dropping hints I could no longer ignore. My heart thundered in my ears, but I kept my voice calm. "You see Marco again today?" I asked casually. Her eyes flicked up, wide and startled. "He just stopped by for a minute to check on the grout line," she said, too quickly, her voice brittle. We both knew it was a lie. The words hung between us like a storm cloud ready to break. In the days that followed, I watched her slip away completely. She'd disappear for hours, come home smelling faintly of cologne and cigarette smoke, a brand I didn't recognize. She avoided my touch, flinched when I reached for her hand. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who moved through our home like a ghost. But I wasn't ready to let go. I needed the truth, not just suspicion. And I knew the only way to get it was to catch them together, to rip off the bandage and see the wound for what it was. So I made a plan. I take a day off, follow her, and find out just how deep the cracks went. The next morning, Jenna moved through the house with a breezy cheeriness that felt rehearsed. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she had errands to run, and slipped out the door with an energy I hadn't seen in months. I waited 5 minutes before grabbing my keys and following her. The sky was overcast, and the air felt heavy, like even the weather knew what was coming. I stayed far enough back not to be noticed, my heart pounding with each turn she took. When she pulled into a strip of commercial warehouses on the edge of town, I killed my engine and watched from a distance. She parked near a row of storage units, the kind rented by contractors for their tools and supplies. Moments later, Marco's white pickup appeared, its dented side panel unmistakable. They greeted each other like lovers, not friends, her arms wrapping around his neck, his hands sliding down to her waist. They kissed with an urgency that sucked the breath from my lungs. I felt rooted to the seat, every muscle locked in horror as my wife melted into the arms of another man. The man who had come into our home under the pretense of fixing it, but who had, instead, torn it apart. I took photos, each click of the shutter sounding louder than a gunshot in the silence of my car. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. When they disappeared into Marco's storage unit, I knew there was no turning back. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under my shoes, and walked up to the unit. My legs felt disconnected from my body, like I was floating in a nightmare. I stood outside the thin metal door, listening to the muffled sounds coming from within. Her soft moans were unmistakable. My wife, my Jenna, was giving herself to him completely. Rage and despair surged through me in equal measure. I raised my fist to pound on the door but froze. A voice inside told me not yet, that I needed more than an emotional outburst. I needed to be smart. So I turned and walked back to my car. I spent the next hour sitting there, staring at the steering wheel, replaying every memory of our marriage, our wedding, our trips, the nights we stayed up talking until dawn. All of it now felt like scenes from someone else's life. When they finally emerged, Jenna's hair was disheveled, her clothes askew. Marco leaned in and kissed her again before they parted ways. I followed her home but parked at the end of the block so she wouldn't see me. By the time I entered the house, she was humming in the kitchen, chopping vegetables as if nothing had happened. She glanced over her shoulder and flashed me a bright smile. "You're home early," she said, her voice sweet and casual. I wanted to confront her right then, to throw the photos in her face and scream until my throat was raw. But instead, I swallowed the bile rising in my chest and simply nodded. I couldn't let her know I knew, not yet. I needed to plan. That night, as she lay sleeping beside me, I scrolled through the photos on my phone. Each image felt like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I forwarded them to my personal email, then backed them up to a cloud drive I kept private. I researched divorce attorneys specializing in infidelity cases, read reviews, and made a list of names. In the days that followed, I played the perfect husband. I cooked her favorite meals, complimented her new hairstyle, and even suggested we plan a weekend getaway. Each time she smiled at me, it felt like a knife twisting deeper, but I endured it. I needed her to keep her guard down while I prepared to reclaim what little dignity I had left. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Jenna left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while she stepped outside to take a call. I couldn't resist. My hands trembled as I opened her messaging app and scrolled through texts with Marco. My blood ran cold as I read them. "Marco, can't stop thinking about yesterday. I love how you taste. Jenna, I needed it so bad. He has no clue. When can we see each other again?" I snapped photos of the messages and emailed them to myself, my heart thundering in my chest. I nearly dropped the phone when Jenna re-entered the room, but she barely glanced my way, too busy laughing at whatever was in her ear. The walls felt like they were closing in. I excused myself, locked myself in the bathroom, and sank to the floor. For the first time since it all began, I allowed myself to cry. But grief quickly hardened into resolve. I contacted one of the lawyers on my list, explained the situation, and set up an appointment. When I showed him the photos and texts, he looked at me with a mix of pity and approval. "You've documented everything well," he said. "This will give you a strong position." That night, as Jenna slept, I packed a bag with essentials, grabbed my documents, and left the house quietly. I stayed at a hotel across town, feeling both liberated and broken. The next morning, I instructed the lawyer to move forward. Divorce papers were prepared, and Jenna was served at home later that day while I watched from my parked car. I saw the confusion on her face as she accepted the envelope, the way her eyes darted around as if searching for me. She called and texted repeatedly, but I didn't answer. Her messages shifted from shocked pleas to angry rants, demanding I return home so we could talk this through. But there was nothing left to discuss. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. A week later, I met with the lawyer again. He told me that because of the overwhelming evidence of her affair, I was in a good position to protect my assets and avoid alimony. The thought gave me a small measure of peace, but the emptiness remained. I moved my things out with the help of a friend while Jenna was at work. Our house, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a hollow shell. I left her a note on the kitchen counter. I hoped the tiles were worth it. It was petty, but it felt like closure. Now, months later, I'm learning to rebuild myself. The cracks in the kitchen floor are still there, a testament to the lies that broke our home. But I've realized that, unlike grout or tile, trust can't be patched once it's shattered beyond repair. And I'll never ignore the hairline fractures in a relationship again.